ICELounge continuing its look at the teams and drivers that make up the 2013 iRacing.com World Championship Grand Prix Series. Now, last week we talked to Team Redline. Today we're talking to Team My3id, arguably Redline's closest competitors. Now, these guys are a one-time World Championship Series champion through Hugo Luis. That was back in 2011. This year they're struggling just a tiny bit, but they have shown that they have got the speed and the consistency to battle it out with the likes of Hutu once again. Don't forget, coming out the first 4 rounds of the season, Luis was actually equal on points with Hutu before that disaster that took place at Phillip Island, which dropped him back in the standings. Martin Kronke arguably has had a standout year as well. After a little bit of a slow start to the season, he's now been able to improve and is in a sterling battle with ICELounge in that battle for the 3rd place in the championship. Hello again everyone, Wil Vincent along with Hugo Luis, Jack Basford and Martin Kronke. Now, Hugo Luis and Martin Kronke are 2 of the drivers in the 2013 iRacing.com World Championship Grand Prix Series, and Basford is their manager. Jack, I shall come to you first. And it's been a bit of a long road for My3id. Starting out in 2005-06, you've grown, you've evolved. Now you're in the World Championship Series, and you've had a pretty good 3 years now.
Yeah, that goes back a long way. I'm not sure where to start. We started off obviously as Clown Paint Gaming, which is a bit different from where we are now. We eventually changed the name because it was difficult to be taken seriously, funnily enough, and that worked out quite well. And then we started to recruit drivers of a sort of higher caliber, and once our ambition was clear, we just worked our way up the ladder. First in Live for Speed, and then we've moved over to iRacing now, and it's worked out pretty well, yeah.
And you have one World Championship Series title to your name with Hugo, and you've been kind of in the picture 2011, 2012, and also this year. Strong series so far. You won 2 rounds of the championship. You got to be pretty happy with the team's progression.
Not really, because the progression, if anything, has been backwards. We came in the first season, were immediately competitive and had all the guys pretty much in the top 5. And then it's, as people have become disgruntled with the physics, if I can say that, and whatnot, gradually the sort of participation has waned a bit. And I think that's shown in the results. We've had more kind of a mixture of front and mid-pack results, and we really like to get most of our cars back to the front if we can.
But when you look at the 2013 picture, you've got Hugo doing well, you've got Martin doing well. It's got to be some hope of the fact that you've got something in the bag to challenge Team Redline this season.
Yep, I mean, we can always rely on Hugo and Martin. They're both extremely quick. Hugo obviously winning the title in 2011, was it? That was a big boost for the team, because that really sort of put a flag down for iRacing, and we suddenly had arrived at that point. And yeah, I'm not sure what else to say. That's where we're at.
Well, I'll turn our attention to Hugo first. Hugo, the first 4 rounds of the season were good. You were tied with Gregor in the points, 2 wins, a 2nd place and a 3rd place, and then it kind of all went downhill for you at Phillip Island.
Yeah, it was tough for the championship. I was looking good. I was hoping to be leading this championship until that moment, but yeah, unfortunately, that happens. That's racing. That's part of it. Unfortunately, but still looking forward to the season. It's looking very competitive. We've seen some great battles in the races. In the last race, Sabine, it was a very fun battle for the lead.
And let's actually talk about that race a little bit, because you were on a 1-stop strategy. Gregor was on a 2-stop. Of course, you had that issue early on in the race where you lost yourself about 3 or 4 seconds coming out of the final corner. But it was still pretty close when all was said and done. There was only really 6 seconds in it. But did there become a point in the race when you realised that you weren't going to get the win?
Yeah, I was thinking about doing for the most part of the race, but then the team told me that probably wouldn't be possible because of the gap Gregor pulled away. But I think if I had a two-stopper strategy, it would be very close, yeah.
But still, you got yourself another second place finish, and we head on to a couple of different tracks over the next month or so, starting with Watkins Glen. It's a track that some drivers love and other drivers hate, but what's going to be your thoughts about that as we head into, even deeper into the middle part of the season?
Yeah, this track is kind of good. I won't say I like it very much, but it is a track that I've been competitive for the past few years. I remember in last year when we were in Watkins Glen, I could take the lead from Gregor in the first lap, even though I was starting second. But I was in a different strategy, so it would be hard to keep leading the race. So Gregor passed me again. So I have a good feeling for this race. I think I'm gonna pull for aggressive strategy something, and it's kind of good track. I still don't know how the car is feeling in that build. I haven't drove it yet.
We'll come back to you in a moment, Hugo, because I'm turning our attention over to Martin Kronke. Martin, you got your first pole position of the season this year at Sebring. You led from the line, and you were able to hold Gregor back for the first couple of laps, but on that two-stop strategy, I'm guessing it was just too much to ask to keep him behind you much longer.
Yeah, absolutely. After the first couple of corners, actually, I noticed the corner exit speeds of Gregor were much faster than mine, and he could brake very, very late for the hairpin, so it was pretty obvious that he was much lighter on fuel and therefore probably on a two-stop strategy or on a very short first stint, but that's pretty unlikely, actually.
And you still had a pretty good race at Sebring. In fact, your season, it started not so well. We reported that quite a lot on GlacierTV, but the last 3 rounds or so really has picked up for you. And you're in with a pretty good battle right now with Ati Kirchhoff in the championship.
It's getting pretty tight now with Ati. I think the gap is down to just a couple of points now. I think 4 or 3 points. But yeah, the season itself started pretty good, actually. He scored a 4th place, I think, in Spa, or was it 5th? I don't know. But of course, second race was not so good with a DNF. But yeah, the rest of the season, 3rd place in Suzuka, 2nd place in Phillip Island, yeah, quite okay.
And how important is that momentum, getting a string of good finishes going to not only improve confidence, but also the morale within the team as well?
That's pretty important. At least for me, the motivation is much higher when I know that I have a shot maybe at 3rd place in the championship. So yeah, keeps me motivated to prepare for the rounds and yeah, drive well.
I think we've seen quite a big improvement in Martin this season as well, because he's been on a learning curve, obviously, and he's really kind of picked up the right way to do stuff this year, and it's really shown in the results. It's been quite a big turnaround.
I completely agree, actually, and I think one of those big moments was back in the race that we had at Spa-Francorchamps with yourself and Gregor. It was an absolutely faultless display in the GT car, holding off Gregor lap after lap after lap after lap. It really was a kind of Martin Kronke saying, hey, I'm back, I've re-arrived almost. But as far as, racing in different series goes, Martin, because you do that quite often, we've seen you in Proto Ice and Polar GT, etc., etc. How difficult is it to adapt to different cars when you're running them on a very, short basis from the F1 car then to a GT car and vice versa?
Well, it highly depends on the type of car I'm running. Running the Proto Ice series with the HPD and then running the F1 car again, that's actually quite easy because they're both high downforce cars and you drive them rather similar. The HPD is basically the same, just a few magnitudes slower. Although when driving the McLaren, it's of course much bigger change in driving style because the car has very little downforce and it's basically a GT car and not a high downforce prototype or Formula car.
Now, how do you approach that as a team manager, Jack? I mean, there are certain drivers that come to mind. Pablo Lopez is the first one I can just pull out, who pretty much races anything, anytime, anywhere. Do you encourage your drivers to, try different cars and see whether they can take something from one car to another? Or do you prefer it if they just stick to, well, the one car probably being the Williams for the WCS?
I think as far as the team effort goes, it really does help to have all your efforts focused in one area. But on an individual level, we just absolutely allow total freedom. There's no demands placed on any of our drivers that they have to race this or that. It's completely their choice. And I think naturally with the kind of people we attract, they all gravitate towards WCS.
Indeed, because, ever since My3id have appeared on the iRacing scene, they have predominantly been within the WCS, of course, making a big impact in other series and other cars as well. But was that your overall aim when, you made that transition to iRacing? Was that aim immediately what was then the Grand Prix Drivers' World Championship?
Yeah, I'd say it was. And that's kind of always been our focus, is to find what the kind of pinnacle is in any sim and then just go for that. That's really how we get our kicks, is just benchmarking ourselves against the best.
Now, I'm going to come back to Hugo momentarily. Couple of questions. First one, you, of course, live on the western side of the Atlantic. Everyone else lives on the eastern side of the Atlantic. How is there any difficulty at all in, testing with your teammates, etc., or is it just, a place of find a time, find a place, simple as that?
No, there is definitely no problem on it. It's just a matter of making plans and you talk before you do them.
And we've also, of course, this year, iRacing Brazil coming along, presenting the World Championship Series in Portuguese. They've got a huge following in Southern America, not only in Brazil, but the rest of South America as well. And how important is it to have that huge fan base, pushing you along when you're struggling in testing, for example, a race isn't going fully to plan?
Yeah, these things about the race in Brazil and South America have been a very important thing, especially to sim racing, and especially for me as well. It's very good to feel that you have lots of people supporting you, and at the same time you can feel that there is a lot, there is a lot of Brazilians that, or South American drivers that are very fast, but maybe they never heard about the Drivers' World Championship. And when they see the broadcast and these things, they think, no, I can have a shot, and that gives them motivation to do it. So it have been a part of this of the growing up of sim racing in South America. I personally, I'm very happy to see all this huge growing up. It's very good to see that lots of people are getting interested in this series. Lots of people are getting interested in iRacing. That's very good.
And I'll ask the same question kind of to you, Jack, but from a more business perspective, of course. You've got your partner with IGP Manager, but from a business perspective, not only having the races in English on PSR-TV and GlacierTV, but now also in Portuguese on iRacing Brazil, how much more does that help the ability to go and find partners, find sponsorship for your cars?
It's difficult to say, because in our case, obviously, because I developed IGP, it's kind of a natural connection there. There's not much of a... We didn't have to go out and find that sponsor necessarily. So I think with other teams, that might be a better question to pitch to, say, Redline or someone that's got more outside or sort of external sponsorship. Because we haven't really pursued that too much, to be honest.
But with the wider, do you consider My3id a brand or is it just a team?
I'd say it's a brand in the sense that most people must recognize it by now. Like if they see our cars, they'll probably know, that red car is a My3id car. But I'm not sure actually. I don't think there's. It depends. There's not exactly a huge market for branding, but I think we have been more consistent in terms of, if you want to call it a brand. Our team's definitely been more consistent over the years with the image we present than most teams. For example, we didn't change our livery for about 5 years. It was just exactly the same livery, all the way through Live for Speed right into iRacing. So we were kind of brand conscious, but I don't think we were ever really seeing ourselves as a brand. We were just, having fun and enjoying the racing.
And My3id, I have to say, do have one of the sexiest websites for the team as well. You can head over to My3idGaming.com when you can learn more about the team. Their entire history is on there. We're not going to bore you with all of that here. But I'm going to come back to everyone, actually. I'm going to talk a little bit about that team dynamic a little bit more. A number of good drivers, of course. You've recruited Jorn Jens for the 2013 season. But how important is there to keep not only a good team dynamic, but a good work ethic within the team?
I think the most important thing is to have a team of people that get along, because there's nothing like trying to manage a team when everyone's at each other's necks. And believe me, we've been there at times, especially 4 or 5 years ago, when the team was really just sort of taking off. You get sometimes personalities that just don't mix, and through the sort of years of experience I've had now doing this, you learn what kind of people make a team tick, and Jorn's definitely one of those guys. And most of the guys that we recruit now, we don't really have to screen them too much, because we kind of know what fits the mold. It's used to put a lot more effort into sort of figuring out what worked than we do now. You just kind of learn a pattern after a certain amount of time.
And of course, you have let a couple of drivers go over the course of the last 12 months as well. Is that along that same thing? Not only keeping the whole idea of driver to driver thing, because that, of course, has got to be important when you're on the racetrack in a series like WCS, but also going back to that whole idea of branding as well.
Yeah, I think it's more important for the team dynamic that you have drivers that all kind of have a common goal. You have to share a goal if you're in a team, because if anyone in the team isn't working towards the goal of whatever the team wants to achieve, then that can be disruptive, because sometimes they'll actually want to pull resources over to whatever they want to focus on, or sometimes they're not very brand aware, if you want to call it that. Like they might represent the team badly in the forums and stuff, and you see all kinds of things getting posted and you think, no, just don't. Yeah, and sometimes you can talk to people and you can give them a slap on the wrist, but some people just need more time to learn. And so when that happens, you just got to let them go. And we've all been there. Not like we're saying the people that are in the team now are saints, because I think we all start off in life soiling our nappies and dribbling, and we sort of work our way up from there. So we all learn from making mistakes, and some people just need to make their mistakes elsewhere, really. That's the way I look at it, is we can't really afford to have people making mistakes in the team.
And as drivers, both Hugo and Martin, you've got to have trust on your teammates on the racetrack, of course. That one's a given. But how important is it to have that friendship off track as well, especially when you come to laborious tasks, for example, a testing, or when things aren't going right for the team?
Yeah, for sure, it's very important to have a friendship out of the track, because racing is not just on the track. You have the whole team, you have the whole series, you have the psychology part of it. So as soon you have a good friendship with your teammates, everything gets more interesting and friendly. I mean, you can't. I can't find the word, but you can't get motivated enough if you want to practice, but at the same time you keep thinking about or what my teammate did to me, or what he's doing wrong. So it's very important to have a good relationship with your teammates, because as soon as you have a good relationship with them, you obviously will get a better results, because you will be able to concentrate more on what you're doing. You'll be able to be more focused.
And I hate to go back to Sebring all the time, and I think a classic example of it was that moment when Martin got a little bit loose through the exit of Sunset Bend. And it's one of those times, where that very almost could have gone horribly wrong. But again, that trust in each other, I think, was critically important. But when we turn our attention a little bit further into the future, I'm going to start with you first, Martin, because I say you've got that incredible battle with Atzi going on in the championship right now. Would you say he's your closest rival, or do you think that you've still got the opportunity to climb higher up in the standings and try and go for the championship?
Difficult to say. I think he's probably at the moment my closest rival. Hugo and Gregor are probably still a tick too fast for me, but yeah, the main problem is right now I've had a couple of rather bad results. Road America wasn't too good, and Interlagos was horrible, to say the least. And yeah, there's already quite big gap actually. I mean, Hugo has a drop result. He has 220 points. I have one drop result. I have 171 points. So already almost 50 points difference. So making that up will probably be quite difficult, but it's not impossible. I mean, one bad result and I'm there. You never know.
I think we've had a slightly unlucky start to the season as well. I think has Hugo had one or two disconnects already?
It's been at least one that I've seen. I
Yeah.
think it's one, because he had first 4 races there a week one, then it was the one at Phillip Island.
Yeah, we do seem to have a bit of bad luck at the start of the season and sort of claw our way back as it goes on. It's been a trend so far each season.
Does that make a difference to the way you do things? You could almost argue in that case that you are the underdog that's having to charge forward rather than being the one looking over your shoulder. Do you prefer it that way, or would you want to be the one on top of the standings and having people claw you down?
I think we'd rather be on top. It gives you that safety net. There's a little margin there, but the drivers would be better positioned to answer that.
Hugo, that's probably perfect question for you, because you now are the one having to charge down Gregor over the course of at least the middle part of the season. I mean, firstly, do you race slightly differently now, knowing the fact that you can't really afford to have another bad race? And secondly, do you prefer being the one hunting another driver down, or would you prefer to have that safety cushion?
I have to adapt my driving now to the most conservative way, because I have one drive already, so I can afford to have another bad race. Sebring was a race that I was thinking about that. In the first few laps, I was like, oh, if I crash, I gonna mess it up. But thankfully, nothing bad happened. But what was the second question? Sorry.
I don't know, I'm useless at these things. Do you prefer to be the person hunting a driver down, or do you prefer to be the one out front and having, other drivers try and chase you up? But also, at the same time, you made a good point there, being conservative. Will there become a point in the season when that would change, when you know that you have to, go for the win, you have to get more points, for example, than Gregor, and then not only in the race itself, but things like strategy? Do you then think differently and turn that into more aggressive later on?
Well, Oscar, answering to the question, I think I would prefer to be the hunted, because you can just think, I'm leading the championship, I'm gonna be, how can I say, more conservative. at the same time, as you were hunting a driver, you have to do your best all the time and maybe try to do some aggressive moves. But at the same time, again, you know that you can't crash or anything because you have already won the race.
I think the season that Hugo actually won the championship is quite a good example of this, where he came from behind. No one really expected him to win the championship that year. I remember that Klaus had a particularly healthy margin at one point, and Gregor was, I think, the leader after that. And then Hugo sort of came past a lot of them and got the championship just at the end. And I think you made a good point, Will, which is that you might initially be conservative because you know you haven't got any chances left, but then by the end you've got nothing to lose. And I think we saw that in the last few races of Hugo's championship season, where he was just totally going for it, you know, all guns blazing, and it just got him the championship.
Would you be looking at such things perhaps later on in the season without trying to get you to give your strategies away for, I don't know, 10 races time, but would you consider the idea, for example, of going on the alternative strategy to try and, not necessarily, you know, especially in a situation where you might not think you can outrace them, to try and outfox the competition a little bit?
If we planned 10 races ahead, we'd have to be psychic. There's just so much that could happen. We barely even planned one race ahead, to be honest. The last race was interesting, very last minute preparation, and I'm surprised we did as well as we did, actually. But I won't say any more than that because that would be giving away too much.
And just to sum it up, to sum up the 2013 season so far, to be fair, overall, we've said, you know, it's been a good season so far, but what do you want out of the rest of the season? Starting with you first, Hugo.
I don't know.
Martin, you can do better than that, surely.
I'm not so sure about that. I don't know either. I hope I can maintain a top 3 position in the championship, but
See, this is why I'm here, Will. I tell them you need to win, and then we just go from there.
Do you actually tell them they need to win, or do you just tell them to do the best they possibly can? Because there is a difference.
Well, apparently they need telling, from what I just heard, so I'll have to tell them afterwards.
I think you should tell them to win.
Yeah.
And on that bombshell, we will end this. Thank you very much to, first of all, Jack Basford, team principal for Team My3id, also to Martin Kronke and to Hugo Luis. We'll see you all next time. Bye bye.